Welcome to Writopia Labs today.
The show that brings you inside the world of Writopia's writers.
This week on the show, we'll explore how the pandemic has impacted schools, pets, entertainment, and more.
We'll also look at how kids are getting ready to go back to school.
Together from our Zoom room, we're going to bring you Writopia Labs today.
For the past week, we have been working on these stories and more.
And today we'll get a chance to share them with you. Nyla.
As fall approaches, youth sports seasons are still in question. Writopia News' Theo Bank has more on that story.
Here on Fisher's Island, New York, all kids have been able to do is go to the beach and play solo sports. Team sports are sorely missed. When the world shut down, youth sports went dark. Dugouts were empty, courts untouched, and fields weren't tended to. This fall, some dugouts will fill up, some courts will be packed, and some fields will be clean and crisp. While we get excited to get back on the field, we must put safety first. Let's see what parents and players have to say about playing and staying safe.
I am torn about that because I think that sports have great benefit for children, and I know that my child really loves it. I believe in physical exercise, and I believe in him doing some real life things. So if it's possible to do it safely, I think that would be great. I'm not sure that we know if it's possible to do it safely yet.
Well, there was actually a long time, a few months where I wasn't playing sports at all because my parents wouldn't allow me to go to the park. So I had to just go on Zoom and do things off my balcony, but I wasn't really playing with anyone.
Thank you so much to everyone who contributed to the story. I'm Theo Bank. This is Writopia News. I'll see you next time.
Wow, it's so interesting to hear the struggle that young athletes have had just to be active. So Theo, what expectations do you have for the season after hearing from parents and players?
Well, it's interesting because I think that this season can still be salvaged, but some sports are safer than others. The less contact, the better, and we have to put safety first.
Thanks, Theo. Great story. So who's part of this pandemic? Essential workers, you, your family, and of course, your pets. Max Sand's here to talk about your furry friends and everything pandemic pet related.
There's so much going on right now. More things on your plate than ever before. But how many things are in your dog bowl? From spreading COVID-19 through pets to interviews with pets themselves, we've got you covered.
There's only one or two documented cases that dogs got it and some cats got it. So it's super rare. It's probably almost like getting hit by the lightning. I would say, take a very good precaution about petting, some stranger dogs. If you do, I would just sanitize your hands. If the owners get the COVID, they shouldn't really try to interact with their pets. We hope that the owners can just ask somebody else to take care of the dog.
Aside from COVID-19 spreading through animals, how do animals feel during quarantine? Should we ask their owners? Now, let's talk to them.
Pandemic life is pretty good. There's extra cuddles and treats. What could be better? It's my duty to defend my family from evil villains, quarantine or not.
Humans being home. They fiddle with me and squeeze me.
My favorite part about quarantine is I get to sleep all day long. And it's awesome.
Rico and Calvin are both pandemic pups, born straight into quarantine. What do they feel about all this?
It's so weird.
Well, I'm an only child, so I have, one more being to play with, so.
I always wanted a dog, and my mom's like, no, because we're never home. So it's the perfect time to have an excuse, we're always home now.
Pets are a part of the global pandemic just like us humans. and it's about time that we start taking them into account, from thinking about spreading COVID through animals to how they feel during quarantine.
Who knew pets had such strong opinions? What's the biggest way we can help our pets during this crazy time?
I think that the best way that we can help our pets is just by remembering that they're there and taking some time to give some love to them. There's so much going on, and I don't blame everyone for having so many other thoughts and things that they have to do, but they are still living creatures, and we do need to give them love. It's okay to spoil them a bit during the pandemic because they might need it. Just remember to take them on walks, to cuddle with them, all the normal things that you would do if we weren't in the pandemic still have to continue even though we're in a pandemic.
Amazing answers, Maxanne. Coming next is Theo Adarkar's story about the heat wave. If you don't like the heat wave, you can buy an air conditioner or you can open the windows in your house. Keep listening to know how to navigate the heat wave and what not to do.
Hello, I am Theo Adarkar and I'm going to record a video about the heat wave. This week's heat wave is going to be 87 degrees Fahrenheit, according to weather.com. People are doing all sorts of things when they are at home, but can they do that stuff during a heat wave?
So the heat makes it more enticing to go swimming, but we have been doing biking, and so we've tried not to do a lot of biking when it gets really hot.
In the heat wave, maybe we should not do so much strenuous activities. How are people doing when they are going to school? This is what Mary English thinks about learning in the heat wave.
Felt like some of my students had a hard time coming back to school for the fall when it was so hot out.
It might be harder for people to learn in the heat wave. Opinions vary on how long the heat wave will last.
I think the hot weather might be with us for a few more weeks.
And I think it's supposed to go for another couple weeks, maybe one more week, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know how long it's gonna last.
So now you know what to do when there's a heat wave. So Theo, what about you? Do you like or dislike this heat wave?
I actually don't really like the heat. I find it a bit hot. I actually would prefer colder weather. Yeah.
September is just around the corner. That month is always school time. But with the pandemic raining on our fun, middle schools everywhere are going to have to rethink their choices. Julia Barney dives deeper to figure out this year's middle school plan.
Middle school is already a huge adjustment, but as summer rolls to an end and school starts to sink into our brains, us middle schoolers are going to have to figure out how we are ever going to go back to school during a worldwide pandemic.
They don't have a definite plan yet, but what they think and hope is going to happen is it's going to be online 4 days a week, and 1 day a week we'll go in for 5-hour days, but with pods, masks, and distancing, and the whole setup is going to be extremely different.
Middle schools still don't have a plan for how to come back, but with the clock ticking and September just around the corner, we need a method. So, with the decisions getting made, there's still one question that's not solved. How are these choices going to affect us? Middle schoolers are already stressed about our friends and grades, but the pandemic has totally brought our social and academic lives to be much more challenging.
The middle school transition is never easy. I think that I'm waiting to see how it turns out. I don't know if it's going to be a better or worse situation, but we'll see.
So, with our freedom of summer coming to a close and the stress of middle school creeping up closer, there's still a lot of things we need to figure out. But we can't give up hope.
So interesting hearing that point of view about middle school. Julia, what choice would you make for your middle school?
I think that I would do a hybrid, maybe go in one day like into the actual school, and then the rest of the 4 days go online. I think that could be a really good way to still see your friends in person, but also have the safety of doing it from your house and not having to see everyone and have the full classes every day.
Middle schoolers are not the only ones returning to school. High school is usually tough enough in normal conditions, but with Corona raging, sports are a standstill with no end in sight. Jakey takes us inside these tough decisions.
There's been much worry about the return of high school sports. We don't know how long sports will be on Zoom, and there's still a big health risk for every school that decides to do sports in person.
We're gonna, listen to what all the like I said, the doctors and the scientists say, and then ultimately Scott is the person that makes that decision. The governor did come out a couple of days ago and say that in New York State it is possible to play certain sports and be in person for certain sports. And that's on a statewide level. Then each school and district needs to kind of make its own decision based on that.
An idea that schools have been having is to have Zoom practices until it is safe to do in-person practices. School will be on Zoom for the foreseeable future with no end in sight.
I think so much of it was unknown that what we were doing is we were trying to plan for, a day or two ahead, a week ahead, a month ahead, and then 6 months ahead. So we literally would have schedules kind of drawn up for every situation that came across. And then as time went on, we just started canceling, kept canceling the one that was a day ahead, the one that was a week ahead,
Well, thank you for the time. I know you're very busy. This is Jakey from Writopia Lab.
What approaches should schools take on this matter?
I think that schools should start practices on Zoom until it is safe to do in-person practices, and they still have time to do Zoom practices, and there's no reason to risk anything and no reason for any kids to have COVID. With us going back to school, we'll have to find new ways to entertain ourselves. Ever since the pandemic began back in March, theaters haven't been all that successful. Our very own Demetrius looked into this in a segment called Now That's What I Call Entertainment.
As the coronavirus spreads and movie theaters still are not open, we mostly use television to fulfill our entertainment choices. I took a closer look into this today, and I also found that drive-in movie theaters are what's keeping, let's say, the theater business alive.
As foreign nations begin to open theater chains and slowly return to the huge box office numbers of 2019, the United States is not at all ready due to the ever-increasing cases of COVID-19.
I do miss movie theaters because I used to go there for the popcorn. I miss movie theaters also to see the new releases of movies that everyone's been excited to see.
Whatsoever, as drive-in theaters are saving the box office by a hair, there are about to be sent new movies. The New Mutants and Bill and Ted Face the Music are out now, and films like these will likely help bring in some numbers when played in drive-in movie theaters.
I think drive-in movie theaters could be good for the short term.
Music is also making a comeback. Since the surprise release of Taylor Swift's Folklore, Katy Perry has just released a new album, Smile, her first in over 3 years. Meanwhile, the VMAs are due Sunday, and acts such as BTS, Lady Gaga, and The Weeknd are to take stage. From Westchester, New York, Demetrius.
Can you tell us more about the VMAs?
Of course. On Sunday, when the VMAs are scheduled, there are going to be a lot of performances, including Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus. The most nominations of the night goes to Lady Gaga with 9 nominations for her masterful music video for Rain on Me. Other nominees include Eminem, Billie Eilish, Future, Taylor Swift, Harry Styles, among others. And that is the VMAs. Thank you.
Thanks, Demetrius. Can't wait to start watching some of those. Kids all over America are stuck at home, so what better to do than learn about current events? In the next segment, Nyla Blake Soden shares all the details about kids' new interests.
Current events, a topic that most would think only adults are interested in. But as the days turn to months in quarantine, many more kids are beginning to grow an interest in politics, weather stories, and global injustices.
Well, I had always kind of thought about current events, but I hadn't really taken deep out and watched the news a lot. but probably like during the quarantine around maybe around April or May, I started getting to more of the Black Lives Matter stuff, and then started to watch more politics, looking at vice presidential and the presidential race.
There are also kids who liked current events even before being stuck at home, but the type of news they followed may have changed.
Well, I think that, like, at least for me, it's kind of different because now with the virus, everything is kind of zoomed in on that. So everything like you read on the news, everything you learn about when you read like an article kind of ends up bringing you back to, so like, what does this relate to COVID-19? And I feel like beforehand, everyone was kind of talking about like different things like climate change and the like dealing with Iran and different things. And like with that, there was kind of a basis for multiple arguments to be made. So some people argued that Trump was better because he dealt with terrorism and helped the economy. But now that now that COVID is the only thing that people are focusing on, I think it's harder to kind of frontline an argument for Trump because now there's only one thing that people really care about.
Because of this growth of popularity in current events, entertainment for kids has started to incorporate current events into their media.
Yeah, our first episode was about George Floyd's death, which is a very important topic for kids to know. To this day, it has the most listens out of all of our podcast episodes, and we even included a current events section in all of our future episodes because it was so popular.
The COVID-19 pandemic has brought a new interest to many kids' lives. We'll have to wait to find out if this interest will continue through to the end of quarantine and into the new school year, or if it's just a temporary thing where it'll be passed through like every other phase.
Oh, it's so cool that you have your own podcast. How do I listen? You also mentioned that we'll have to wait to see if this new interest will stay after quarantine's over. But what do you think will happen?
I think that kids will stay interested in current events after quarantine, but I also think that some will start to get new interests now that they're allowed to be outside. And you can listen to my podcast at #relatablepodcast.com. Thank you.
Amazing. Round of applause to everyone. So, that'll do it for Writopia Labs today.
We hope you all enjoyed the show.
And maybe learn something along the way, too.
We'll see you next time on Writopia Labs Today.